Hello and welcome to Accounting Web's Accounting Excellence Talk for August 2018. I'm John Stockdyke for Accounting Web, and with me are Chris Godden from Burnhams Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors, and somebody who's a bit of a celebrity in the accounting excellence world. He now plies his trade with Sage as the Director of Product Marketing, Chris Downing. Chris, thanks for joining us, and on behalf of Sage for making this webcast possible. We're going to be tackling the big issue really for the profession over the past few years, but we're getting into a kind of the final stretch of MTD for VAT, but we'll also be looking into a bit of a wider picture about how to approach challenges like that. Before we get into the whole agenda though, this is an interactive session. So if you want to ask either the Chris's or me any questions or raise a point for debate, type it into the Cover It Live box beside the video on the page you're watching this, on the hub. That will come through to me on my iPad. So as we go along, I can bring in your comments and we can chew those around. There's also going to be a session for Q&A at the end as well. So about half an hour from now, we'll tackle any unanswered questions. After the event, this will be available on demand for you to watch again. We'll be picking up some of the points we haven't been able to cover in the video. We'll do a podcast, a follow-up, that will also be available. And finally, Sage have provided an MTD toolkit that you can download, and the link for that is on the same page as well. So lots of material to support you on your MTD journey. Just to get into the agenda, we'll be going through, I'll be getting an overview from the two Chris's, how they approach change generally and what they've done in previous instances. Then, thanks to Chris Downing, we'll dig into some of the legislative requirements of MTD for VAT and some of the other things lurking in the undergrowth you may need to consider. And then the final session, the sort of second half, is going to all be about the practical step-by-step things you can do to make MTD work. So that's the big picture. Maybe to get us started, Chris, I was alluding to your previous role as technology champion for accounting excellence with Milstead Langdon. You were a BI partner there. But before you forget it all, what were the kinds of things you would do when you approached a big issue like this?
Big issues like this have happened before, whether that's real-time information, payroll changes, or actually auto-enrollment. I think auto-enrollment was really the first indication in terms of big legislation changes affecting an awful lot of businesses at the same time. And I took a few lessons from that approach in terms of we had to review each client, understand are they PAYE registered, get their PAYE reference code, understand what the onboarding date was, and also just manage expectations and also understanding what they want to do in terms of do they want the accountant or do they want a third party to help them in legislation, but also manage their expectations. Because when there are changes, people sort of get scared and nervous. And we knew from there it was all about communication and marketing. So taking the same sort of approach with MTD. So John, as you said, I was an accountant only 3 months ago, and MTD was on the horizon for a long time, and it was all about segmentation, categorization of clients, understanding where your clients are, what software they use, and what's their launch date. Now, clearly with MTD just for VAT now, which is better than the income tax threshold status, life's a little bit easier, but the trouble is the timetable's still very tight. So it's all about the communication and understanding your client.
So Chris, how does that fit with your approach? Have you got any different takes?
I think it's very similar. Again, the extra thing I would add to that is it's really about understanding your clients and actually spending time with them. The big issue that I see with clients is they don't really understand. They hear the phrases MTD, it's coming in for April 2019, what does it mean? And I think we definitely need to spend time with our clients and actually understand what they're doing and what we can offer to make it easier for them.
Do you use any particular? Do you find any particular techniques are successful that getting the message across, or just that have an impact on actually beginning to make them recognise the shape of the change and what they need to do?
Yes, I think whilst Chris mentioned that it's all about VAT, we've approached it really looking at the income tax side of it as well, because we know it's going to go that way. So we're really just trying to make sure that our clients understand what keeping digital records mean. A lot of our clients are still very much either what we'd call the carrier bag clients or shoebox clients, as a lot of people remember it, or spreadsheets. That's probably the biggest challenge, is that we see so many different versions of spreadsheets, and how do we get that? How do we help them turn what they're doing into something that will be MTD compliant?
And will that involve a sort of standardized solution and a standardized approach for every client, or have you got variations on a theme for them?
I don't. Whilst I think the end game is that we'd like everybody to be fairly standardised, I think it's a case of looking at which clients we've got now, which are the urgent ones, and Chris is quite right about VAT. That's the urgent one, and I think making sure that any clients that are VAT registered or over the VAT threshold and should be VAT registered, is that either their systems are already compliant, and a number of our clients already are, because we encourage them. But we're still picking up new clients now who are VAT registered, still doing things on spreadsheets. And I think most of them they really do need to understand that you can't wait to the 1st of April 2019 to start doing things. We need to be doing things now.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo that point as well. With the tax season in between, I think I phrased it, this is about the last chance we have to step back and look at it in a way that you can still plan for and be strategic. As far as strategic planning and actually the tactical steps, Chris, again, anything you'd add about, you've been talking to a few more accounting firms in your new role a little bit. Can you bring forward any specific techniques and approaches to the change that you think are particularly effective?
I think the key thing to understand, as Chris says, the timetable is very tight. Depending if you want to take in bank holidays or not, we've got 160 working days until 1st of April, and that's quite a scary number, especially when a typical practice has more than 100 clients, and we've got little things like the tax return season coming up. And therefore, yes, the key thing is, while you've got the breathing space, do a review now, understand your clients. But from what we've been doing, working with our customers, with accountants large and small, the exercise isn't that bad. And once you've actually got over that initial hurdle of understanding what your clients actually use as their sort of basis for accounting software, some people are quite surprised the fact actually the number of spreadsheets clients aren't so many. You've got clients already on a product, they just need to make sure the product is compliant. But it's just going to do that initial review. And the other key thing to do is don't make MTD a lonely job. It shouldn't be the responsibility of just one individual within a firm. Now clearly that's a problem if you're a sole practitioner, but if you've got employees, staff who love a bit of technology, love to work with their clients, try and sort of make them the ambassadors of the firm, the technologists, the people who actually want to get involved, use the software, and they're probably the best people to actually work with the clients and train the clients. So it's identifying individuals that actually share intel and knowledge throughout the whole firm.
Yeah, so it's not just reviewing and planning your clients, it's applying a little bit of kind of
it's
team
the seeds
planning.
of change, isn't it? As Chris says, MTD for VAT is just the first stepping stone of MTD full VAT really over the next couple of years. And this is the whole point, is take a breather, take the opportunity that MTD has gone light, because let's be honest, last year was all looking quite scary, and the fact that income tax reporting was going to hit April just gone, and there's no way that was going to happen. Now clearly things will happen over the next couple of years, and HMRC, the software providers, accountants, everyone's going to learn from this exercise in terms of it's all about the communication and making sure you give businesses the choice in terms of what they want to do. But take this as an opportunity to try and restructure your practices and understand the right processes and systems to put in place.
Well, and I'd add further to that is just making sure that any staff you're now taking on, and we've been doing this over the last 2 or 3 years, is that is to find those people who are enthusiastic about things being in the cloud and digital. So it's the millennials, which unfortunately I'm not one of them, but those are the people who understand it, and it's natural for them to do. And I think if you're bringing those people on and they buy into what we're trying to achieve for our clients, it definitely makes the job a lot easier. And as Chris said, you end up with other champions in the firm rather than just the main person that runs the firm saying we've got to do it. That's the most difficult way of trying to do anything if you don't get buy-in from the rest of your team.
Yeah, because in my previous life, the recruitment I was doing there over the last 12 months, I thought personality was key. Yeah. If they've got the right personality, the right savviness, the eagerness to learn, they're the attributes you're looking for in terms of your new next accountant stroke advisor.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's, the people issues. It's interesting to see you bring that up, but I'm going to take you back to some of the nuts and bolts. You know, you both have pegged, you know, the whole point of this session. Our main objective is dealing with VAT MTD, but you've both alluded to the fact that there are other things hanging off the back of that or complicating the picture. And we did an editorial planning session yesterday, and I'm afraid I kind of came out of there with like seeing it as a doom scenario. There were just, you know, the B word cropped up and its potential impacts. I think IR35 could be huge, and I think both of you have mentioned that, you know, even VAT itself is a moving target. So, setting aside Objective 1 MTD for VAT, what are the other things on your kind of planning agenda for 2019, Chris?
I think it's all about making sure, and Chris mentioned it earlier, about profiling our clients and really understanding where they all are, in particularly in the move towards MTD. Quite a lot of our clients are already using some form of accounting system. Quite a lot of them are using cloud. What we've really done up until now is just to really see what systems they are using without saying we think you should have Sage, for example, or Xero or QuickBooks. Is that because a lot of them will already be compliant, although they won't realise it. A lot of the software has moved on quite dramatically over the last 24 months. So that's the big thing for me, is understanding where they all are at the moment.
I mean, any other technical issues around VAT or some of those other topics I mentioned?
Yeah, there are a few issues around VAT. I think one of the ones we're starting to see relates to VAT MOS. First of all, we've got the mini one-stop shop. We've got clients who are in that particular sector, and it's actually quite difficult to collect data even on the desktop versions of software. And I think one of my concerns going forward is are the cloud accounting providers actually doing enough on the VAT analysis side? Yes, I think I'm happy that I think any standard VAT returns are very easy to do on all the cloud solutions. They all work. It's when you start to get to something a little bit more complicated, like VAT MOS, and also partial exemption. So they are concerns of ours, and those are the clients we just need to identify to say, okay, what are we going to do? Do we leave them on a desktop solution for now, which is MTD compliant, or do we look to move those further forward into the cloud?
Chris, can you pick that up? Could you also, sort of, while you're doing it, it sounds very similar to a query from Georgia here. Her line was, what will happen with flat rate and partially exempt clients in terms of what they will need to put in place in software? So
I think it comes down to actually what MTD really means. So what HMRC are looking for is a clean audit trail of the transactions making up the VAT return. Now, clearly, all they receive are the 9 box values of the VAT return. You'll carry on retaining and calculating the workings behind it. So when you've got situations like partial rate VAT schemes, and I know from experience, they can be a nightmare if the data's not typed in correctly the first time round. But HMRC recognise that you need a spreadsheet of some sort or form to actually do a complex calculation. And so therefore, best practice is that you'd have a piece of software doing the day-to-day transactions, cash book, bank recs, capturing invoices for running the business. And if you're in a situation where you're doing a partial rate VAT scheme or anything more complicated, is actually you're allowed to take certain transactions out into a spreadsheet to do your calculations. Hence Chris's point in terms of having a really good detailed understanding of the various VAT codes. They're key for doing the partial rate calculations. Do the calculations spreadsheet, understand what the number is, and then what the software needs to enable you to do, which Sage has always been able to do, is actually do a memorandum adjustment to the 9 box values. And that's the key thing. So you're allowed to do calculations outside of the software. And this is the whole opportunity, is actually looking at what software you use and how you use it. And there will be other questions raised about group VAT schemes, because it's not until you start understanding your client base, which is the key thing. That you understand that actually a number of clients might have more complex VAT situations, and quite a few have a group situation. So this is why Sage has created a tool, whether it's Sage 200 or Sage 50 or Sage Accounting, to actually bring those transactions together to enable you to do that submission. But I do think that the next 12 months is going to be an absolute legislative nightmare for accountants, because GDPR is still happening. Because we know from our accounting client base, they're asking questions about GDPR. Our GDPR awareness website has been accessed all the time. I know from first-hand speaking to businesses, they're still not aware of GDPR. Then we've got next year, whether that's VAT, MTD for VAT, Brexit, reverse charging for CIS next October, which I think has been like a silent beast in the background. So it's almost like a perfect storm next year in terms of legislative changes. And by the way, we need to talk to all our clients and make sure they're compliant from their software. But I think it's understanding what the next 18 months are going to be like, and I do think it'll be a better situation for accountants thereafter.
And do either of you, I guess maybe that has come in, but any unifying themes? I mean, it is the communication at the appropriate level for the client's expertise and where they are. That would be our point. You know, direct the messages to the people who need them at the point that they need them most. And is that a fair summary?
Yes, I think it is. It's again, Chris mentioned something there about GDPR, and I think that MTD we've been looking at for a couple, 2-3 years. It's been on the horizon, and then the hand grenade of GDPR gets thrown in the middle of it. And I think a lot of people, I won't say took their eye off the ball, but almost pulled back on what was happening with MTD, and it's almost like we're trying to get this juggernaut moving again.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, that's we've seen exactly the same scenario here. So this is, let's get the juggernaut moving here. We talked about that. It's down to MTD, and I think Chris will bat this over to you for helping us out on the technical detail. We got that VAT notice at the end of July.
Yes.
That sort of set out the main requirements. Were there any new surprises, new twists there that again viewers should probably flag up and make sure their client base is aware of?
I think that comes down to, with the MTD notice, we were all waiting for it, because I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of accountants actually sat back and actually just waited for certainty of it happening, and hence why when you talk to businesses and accountants and other people, they were thinking MTD would be delayed again. So when we're looking at what the notice actually said, it's actually trying to sort of confirm what spreadsheets mean, where you can use them. You still need a digital record. Spreadsheets can be a digital record, but Toulouse, how do you connect that to the HMRC portal, which is one of the challenges? It's also understanding in terms of what the digital link is, but this whole soft landing period over the next 12 months, what that really means. And though it says cut and paste from one system to another, in practicalities, where is that going to happen? That's going to be cut and paste from a spreadsheet into another product. So it all gives the whole impetus that digital software, accounting software, is the way forward. And that's what HMRC are driving to. And also there are very few situations where if you are VAT registered, that you would be actually excluded from the scheme, which is the other point as well.
Yeah, what were those situations?
Well, one, you need, if you're of a religious society, which basically goes against what your beliefs are in terms of actually maintaining digital records.
Plymouth Brethren.
Exactly, yeah. Yep. So we haven't got that many of those clients. Whether you're actually digitally excluded, so are you in the far reach of some Shetland Islands with no broadband connection, unable to connect to it. So it's that sort of, the very few situations where you wouldn't be affected. So clearly, if you are VAT registered, turnover above £85,000, you need to be maintaining some sort of piece of software for your accounting records.
Now, I've got another technical question for you from Philip, and he wants to, is he correct in thinking that the first MTD VAT returns will be to the 31st of March 2018, as the filing date is 7 May? Now, have you got an answer to that? I have a feeling myself, but I'd prefer not to.
No, so effectively it's from the 1st of April, so therefore your normal 31st of March 2019 VAT return will be submitted as a lot of businesses already submit through the portal. And I think this comes down to why MTD is such a challenge. When you consider that 89% of all businesses in the UK who are VAT registered currently use the HMRC portal to type the numbers in. Therefore, only 11% use software, even though the software might have been able to submit the VAT returns for years, like Sage has been able to. It's a mindset change, not just a software change. So therefore, going back to your question, it's fairly from the 1st of April you'd be worrying about, but like everything, early adopt.
Yeah. March. So it's kind of the end of June ones.
Yeah.
That is the first you'll really have to do. So Chris, that's the technical scenario. How are you getting on with your preparations? Where do you think you are?
Well, I think we're fairly well advanced on it. I think most of our clients that are VAT registered are submitting from software. What we've been doing as a fairly long-term plan is that a couple of years ago we actually purchased a significant number of licenses on Sage's cloud licenses to be able to start bringing our client records onto it. So clients where we were assisting them to do VAT, is that rather than doing spreadsheet calculations, we've taken their data and we're now entering it. We have been entering it for them with my bookkeeping team, actually straight into the cloud solutions. So most of our clients are there. We still got 1 or 2 stragglers still using spreadsheets. We still got 1 or 2 that are still using desktop solutions where they print off the VAT return and it gets entered through the portal exactly as Chris has said. So it's definitely happening, and it is a case of we think we've identified we know we've identified all of those in our practice, and we're now spending that time to try and move them onto that next stage to say you need to have MTD compliant software. We would suggest you go into some form of cloud accounting because you can access it, we can access it, we can start sharing information, and you'll know when you get to the 1st of April that the VAT return that finishes in, or the first quarter that finishes after that, you're going to be ready, and it's not going to be a big surprise to you.
And I think that's quite key. It's the carrot and the stick approach. Is you shouldn't see MTD as you're forcing someone to create change. It's trying to actually sell the benefits or actually make them aware of the benefits of using software.
Yeah.
More efficient process in the accounting, better connected accounting with the advisor as well.
Absolutely.
It must make your life so much easier.
It does. It's my dream would be that all clients are entering the information themselves. We're using all the extra tools for them to be able to get their information in without having to sit each night for half an hour typing things in. So we can look at the information on a regular basis. We can say to them, we've had a look, we've seen you've done the transactions for this quarter of the VAT, we're happy with it. Do you want to press the button or do you want us to press the button? But at the same time, that gives us an opportunity to be reviewing where their business is on a regular basis. So it's a huge advantage all round for everybody, and I think we can be a lot more proactive in additional added advice to clients if they're up to date and we're all sharing the information.
Yeah. If you look at that ideal scenarios, 100%, where would you say your progress bar is along the path?
It's probably not as far as I'd like to think it is. I mean, probably. I think we're probably just about approaching halfway. I think, and that can be quite frightening. But I think if I look at the client base as a whole, we're probably approaching halfway. If I look at clients that are VAT registered, I think we're around about 80–85%. I think most of them are there because we've kicked them. And we've been kicking people off. I won't say kicking them off, that's the wrong phrase. We've been encouraging them to come off of some of the legacy products they've been using and move towards more of the subscription type solutions out there, which most of them are cloud, but there are other desktop solutions out there which are subscription, but it means they're up to date. It means that if the data's in there, we know it's MTD compliant already.
So Chris, I mean, how does Burnhams' experience sound to the wider marketplace? What do you see out there amongst other firms?
I must admit, Chris is quite far ahead of the market. Sage services thousands of accountants in the UK, and we know from the download and the feedback which we've had from our MTD toolkit, the number of viewers of our webinars and just the support team and also our field operatives working with accountants is, no matter what size the firm is, whether you're a single practitioner or a firm with hundreds of employees, it's quite scary to understand and appreciate that actually a lot of firms might not have even done their segmentation exercise. They were literally waiting for the July date. And this goes to prove that accountants have never been so busy. And this is one of the challenges we're going to face, is the fact that unless you've got certain individuals in the organisation willing to sort of take charge and ownership of this task, it may be there may be some practice actually being really rushed in February, March time, because December, January be tax return season.
Yeah. I think for me, it's all about seeing MTD as an opportunity. We see MTD as an opportunity. We saw GDPR as the same opportunity. Same with auto-enrolment, is that we know it's coming. We know we've all got to do it. So why wait to the last minute? Let's see what we can do to make it easy for our clients as well as us, because if it's easy for them, it's easy for us. And I think it's not seeing these things as, oh, we've got to do it, it's a big threat, at some point we'll have to do it at the last minute. Do it now. Just take an opportunity and just move it forward.
Because I always saw MTD as a big opportunity, was a big red button, as a reset button.
Yeah.
Because you consider the number of your clients who you're always chasing for information in December and January.
Yeah.
Just imagine you access their data in May or June, validate their accounts, post a few journals, turn the wheel, tax return done. So suddenly you're doing accounting on your terms, not the client's terms. And it's a case of how much energy do you put in place to try and get there sooner, to create capacity later in the year for actually growing the business. And I think that's the biggest opportunity for the MTD.
Absolutely.
Making accounting practices more efficient, but also when you take on growth, because there are 5.4 million businesses in the UK. With Brexit and other legislation changes, they're all going to want help. They're going to help from their trusted advisor. And therefore, we need to create capacity in a world where there isn't that much capacity.
Yeah. And again, you're describing Chris's ideal scenario there, and you know, we're all various percentage points along. Before the session, we were just chatting, and I think all three of us kind of sensed the same idea of MTD, you know, full fat MTD for income tax, really pushed people into cloud accounts and to the data capture tools. What I've noticed is that the take-up of the expense capture tools, you know, the receipt banks, and Sage has got its own, they've dropped off this year. It's like, you know, with the relaxation, there was a real surge, you know, a panic surge, and you know, everybody did the thing we tell them not to do, of, oh, you know, step back and relaxed. So there's a bit of a lull, and actually people have lost momentum. So, you know, that's the profession as a whole. Are there things, you know, have you encountered, you know, how are you dealing with that sort of inertia?
We've absolutely noticed that. We work with both auto entry and receipt bank. The interesting one for me is the way we work with auto entry, where we've got an overall account, and we give access to our clients to be able to link, to be able to capture the receipts into their various cloud solutions. And over the last probably 3 or 4 months, I've definitely seen a reduction in the usage of it, which is a shame, really. I think did GDPR hit it backwards? I'm not sure. Something has sort of pulled people back from using it, and I just think again we need to sort of push again on that one, and just really help the clients understand that it's not extra cost for this, extra cost for that. That's the way that a lot of clients see it. But when you start to explain to them that if they capture a document electronically, it's taken them a few seconds. If they capture a dozen or so, they might have saved themselves half an hour, and they can be off selling their services, and they make a lot more money, and it's a lot less stressful for them. But it benefits us.
Because I think a key thing is trying to make these processes habitual, isn't it?
Yeah.
Try and get them in the process that are always doing it. And this becomes one of the challenges in the fact that as the accountant, you want them on these better products, these better services. But at the same time, you're busy as well.
Yes.
And therefore, where's your time best spent? Your time is best spent doing the advisory, making sure your clients are compliant, when actually you know that you also need to pick up the phone, meet up with them, and encourage them to use the technology.
Yeah.
And actually, how do you bill for that as well? Which is one of the challenges what MTD is bringing along, as opportunities. You actually revisit actually the services which you provide.
Absolutely. The one thing that I think we're all seeing is that whilst we know that compliance has got to happen, the value that clients put on compliance is getting less and less. And I think with being able to have things in a digital format will allow us to actually do that piece of work a lot quicker. and be able to spend the time, as Chris quite rightly says there, on providing those added value services about, we've had a look at your business, we've done your VAT return. By the way, have you got an issue on X, Y, and Z? Or we noticed, for example, your margin's dropping. Is there a reason behind it? And actually, sometimes that's what the clients want. They want that, either the affirmation they're doing things well, or actually give them a bit of a nudge because things aren't looking quite as good. But you need to have the time to do it. So
when you're communicating the MTD issue with them, are you able to wrap up that sort of, you can see the underlying platform as a way of delivering services, but can you wrap MTD up with your solution in a way the client to make that really obvious to the client? There's they're going to get more and better advice from you out of the back of it. How do you go about doing that?
Well, the one thing we try and do is speak regularly to all our clients. We don't just wait for them to come to us at the end of the year and saying, can you do my accounts, or once a quarter, can you do my VAT return? We do try and talk to them regularly. And I think it's about reinforcing that message, is that there is an advantage to them. The first time you talk to them, they'll nod and say yes, but you think that's not really gone in, and you do need to keep talking to them. You do need to keep demoing it to them as much as anything else. So it's just about reinforcing that keep reinforcing that message that you've got to do it. I mean, that's the one thing I always say to the clients. At some point, your records are going to have to be MTD compliant. Why don't we do it now? So let's take the opportunity now to look at what you're doing, look at how you're doing it, and say, can we make it easier for you? And I think that's a message that's quite easy to sell to people, and I do see a lot of enthusiasm in amongst the clients.
Because I think the other thing is, businesses don't like surprises. And the accountants don't like to deliver surprises, i.e. you have a large VAT bill, you've only got, or a tax bill, and you've got a couple of days to pay it. So one of the drivers actually, wouldn't it be great to understand what your personal tax liability is 6 months before it's due?
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's trying to provide or give insights in terms of the opportunities which they'll get from using software, rather than just sticking to manual records.
Okay, thanks. Now, Chris, again, we've sort of heard how Chris and Burnham is approaching the topic, but there's a lot of other firms maybe further back on the progress bar towards April. Just as a final farewell, you've advised them to do, talk to the clients, do the reviews, and work out who needs what attention. But can you help break down the challenge between, sort of September and April, or April to July? What are the next components you'd break the project into, and can you step the viewers through the next things they should think of after the review?
It's all coming out of client segmentation. It's understanding what product they're on. So clearly, if they're on a non-software product, their manual records, Excel spreadsheets, they're high on the priority. Then it's understanding their VAT quarter date or their year end. So if you've got businesses with a December year end, take the opportunity to think about, let's get you on a piece of software from the 1st January. Let's get all your records clean, which means they're actually early adopters. They're also you get a full year's worth of records in a cleaner format. The other thing you must do, you need to get champions, and get champions in your firm to actually revisit the software, because we mentioned Receipt Bank and Auto Entry. Both of them are innovating their product, and yes, there may have been a lull in adoption, but actually that creates innovation, whether that's Receipt Bank with their fetch, or with Auto Entry I saw this morning in terms of some of the new formatting functionality got around VAT records as well. So it's constant contact, segmentation, understand your clients, and actually be aware that actually time is ticking by. But then also call upon your software providers, because HMRC are going to do very little in terms of awareness campaigns or commercials. There's going to be no big fuzzy monster at all.
Yeah. That has been mentioned by others, and I think we won't. We're not going to bash HMRC here. I think we might touch on that in the podcast afterwards. But we're still banging the same drum too. But it is moving people along. What they need to do next. I mean, where's your focus going to be between now and and the 1st of April, will you have to kind of set the MTD preparations aside for self-assessment season at Burnham?
No, we won't. I think the MTD preparations we're fairly well on. What we're really doing is looking at the clients. Again, Chris mentioned it about the clients who are not on MTD compliant software already, and that as records are coming in, not only mainly for personal tax now, is that we're getting them onto some form of cloud solution, so it will be MTD compliant. So they're going to be ready for it. So it won't be a surprise to the client. So our main thrust now for the next couple of months is make sure that we know exactly what system every client's on. To know as Chris again mentioned, VAT quarters, that's key, or even we've got a few clients on annual accounting systems, and it's important to understand what date they need to start doing it, but I'd rather we get them ready now. So it's all about just, while we've got the opportunity, I would say a quiet time of the year, but we never have a quiet time, probably like most of the people watching this. You don't have a quiet August. There's always something going on, and I think MTD is that thing that's pushing us at the moment, and we're just trying to do things earlier each year. Not only we're trying to be earlier on VAT returns each quarter, we're trying to be earlier on tax returns, and we're trying to turn everything in, or trying to move as much as possible into some form of digital records for everybody.
And also, I think the key thing to iterate is that MTD doesn't just mean cloud, because I think MTD is all about being connected, and that's being connected with HMRC or connected with your accountant, and that's where Sage has put an awful effort in making sure its desktop products are connected to the cloud and connected to HMRC. So whether you're on Sage 50 on subscription, you're compliant. If you're on Sage Accountant, you're compliant, or Sage 200. And that's the key thing. It's all about change and giving businesses choice. They shouldn't have to change for change's sake.
There's been a lot of talk about software here. I mean, I think we have moved us quite nicely into the questions from the viewers. One of them came through. I'll just find it on in terms of going early. One of our people sort of said, "Does using MTD compliant software mean that is it better to adopt the software kind of for full MTD and just start doing it now?" And I think we're aware there are these pilot schemes HMRC's running, not just for the MTD for VAT, but also MTD for income tax. I mean, are you aware, Chris, or have you got any clients? Because you can, I think, opt to go in.
You can opt to go in, but again, I think what we're finding, this is the Brexit situation. The Brexit situation has redirected efforts from central government, HMRC, in terms of what they're doing. And yes, there are APIs available for the income tax returns, but actually they're not as rich as the VAT ones. And that's the whole point. The whole focus is on MTD. And this is where businesses really need to be on software on a subscription basis, which means their software will always be up to date. So as legislation changes, as portals changes, as the data connection changes, their software will actually change with it and be compliant.
And I think that's been a big issue over the last 6-9 months, because the HMRC changed their portal, and a number of people on some of the legacy products all of a sudden couldn't submit their VAT returns. So that's definitely a challenge.
There's also the issue that the MTD portal is the APIs and MTD are going through one mechanism into software and into the client's business tax account. But the existing sort of agent relationships and filing mechanisms are through the government gateway. We have the situation that I think Bill has asked about does the agent end up filing the return using their codes, or does the client need to acquire their own gateway software to file through which to file their VAT returns?
This comes down to what's been happening recently in terms of where you've had agents wanting to early adopt into MTD. Some agents have been restricted because they might have had clients who may have filed a VAT return late, or they might have been paid by DD, and therefore it's been restricted. It's been getting better and more open, and therefore the pilot has been limited in terms of who's been using it. So in terms of actually submitting the VAT returns, the client needs to be on compatible software, which enables the gateway to be opened. And then in terms of the accountant being able to file the returns on their behalf, this comes down to being connected. The accountant can log into the accounting software and submit the VAT returns on the client's behalf. And this is the whole point, is people, because there's been little communication or awareness in terms of what the portal is. Actually, it doesn't exist. That's the key thing. It's the software. Yeah. People still have this impression in terms of what new is going to be like. It's like the old. It's not. Mm-hmm. Is the software is doing the work for you. But the key thing is understanding how the accountants work with their clients. Mm-hmm. And this is where Sage has built Sage Accountants Cloud, which enables the practitioner to review their clients in one listing. If they're on Sage Business Cloud Accounting, they can dip into the return, and also they get the notifications. Because with the old route with VAT, at least you had some understanding that VAT return might have been submitted. With software, unless you've got, let's say, an email or some submission notice, you're never quite sure. Hence why the hesitation and the untrusting nature of business in terms of, is this going to work? But they don't actually see anything actually happening.
Mm-hmm. Okay, both of you have been talking about, you did say, Chris, here you did acknowledge, and HMRC acknowledge, the need for spreadsheets for kind of group adjustments and partial exempt, the tinkering with the VAT numbers before you file them. You're not quite carrying some, there's 2 or 3 comments at least, and people are just, there's not enough, I've warned you, I think that we were going to need to talk about spreadsheets before this session is over, and I think we'll return to it in the podcast, but they're not carrying it on. Ian's saying there's a lot of accountants and their clients very happy with spreadsheets, don't see the need to change, and their question, when are they don't, they don't want to let go. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And particularly, when are we going to get some useful information about bridging software? I mean, can Sage fulfill that need for the people who don't want to go the Blenheim route and go fully connected and digital?
I think the honest answer is, it depends on what do businesses want from bridging software. Because bridging software is going to be a spreadsheet which has been created by the software provider in terms of what they think businesses need to record in transactions and submit the VAT return. And because accountants and businesses don't like change, none of us like change. And therefore, what's the situation going to be? They're still going to maintain the spreadsheet they know and love with the various columns of data, whether it's a cash book orientated or just a list. And they'll end up having to copy and paste that data into another provider's spreadsheet, which has been API enabled. Does that sound efficient to you? And also, are you actually losing using quality data, quality information? And when you're actually preparing the year-end accounts, what records do you rely upon? That's one of the challenges, isn't it?
It's a big issue, because I think you'll end up, as Chris is quite right, you'll end up with 2 sets of data. And I think, whilst I understand about people not wanting to change, it's all about really saying, okay, we know something's got to happen because MTD's happening. There's no choice about it. It's going to happen. So how do we make it better for us and for the clients? And I think by helping them understand that, yes, spreadsheets have been great. They've certainly helped us. We still use them an awful lot for all sorts of tasks. But actually, we can make better use of this data if it's in a better format. And I think it's really selling the benefits and being enthusiastic about the changes rather than just being grumpy saying, oh, there's a change come along, I suppose we better do it. Is embrace it, look for the opportunity. There's huge opportunities out there with what's happening if you open your eyes and look at to see what you can do with it.
You told us earlier you still do have some spreadsheet-based clients.
Yeah.
So, and I guess they may be getting the most of your attention in the next month or 2. So what are you actually planning to do with them? You will migrate them to a cloud solution, or?
Yes, I mean I can think of 2 in particular. One's a new client we've just taken on. Who I remember the first meeting with them. How do you keep your accounting records? We keep it on spreadsheets, and you put your head in your hands and think, okay. But if we sat down and I sat down and explained to them about what's happening. They are VAT registered. They have to do these great lots of calculations. They always do it at the very, very last minute at the end of the quarter. And we talked about the benefits of perhaps having it in some form of cloud solution and collecting data electronically, and their eyes lit up as if nobody's ever spoken to them about it. The other one, who's a client of ours for a number of years, has sort of resisted quite a bit until about 6-9 months ago, and has been on to the email or speaking to us saying, so what about these cloud accounting solutions? Because we talk about it all the time with them, and we don't. It's not a threat to them. It's something which is part of our vocabulary in the firm anyways, and I think it's easier for people to get people to change.
Okay, well that's spreadsheets again, right again. That's pretty much used up all our time. We're gonna have to go, but one last thing before we sign off, and I kind of always do this. We'll maybe start with you, Chris. You know, from all the topics and things we've talked about, what would be the one last piece of advice you want people who are watching this to go away and just start really doing now?
I think the piece of advice is looking at the opportunity. And I recognise back in practice, the ability to actually get access to clients' data at a click of my fingers and provide advice and guidance. That was just brilliant, because it's all about client user experience. And I was able to provide great advice to my clients in real time, no matter where I was.
Chris, can you top that with your final farewell?
I think it's just about be enthusiastic about the changes, actually understand your clients fully. We've mentioned that a number of times today, but really understand your clients, get them enthused about the changes in the right way. And again, I'm echoing what Chris has just said, is you've then got live data. You can then really start to give some fantastic insights to clients about their businesses, and that's the wow factor.
Okay, so there's the answer for you. There is, it is going to be a challenge, but there is life after MTD, and it could be ultimately better for accountants and clients if we are digital. Now, if you want some practical help to get on with the project, do go download the Sage MTD handbook on our page. That should give you more detail about the kinds of things Chris was talking about. And for any other information, keep coming back to Accounting Web. We're going to be covering this non-stop from now until May and beyond. Thank you both for a really insightful session, and thank you all for viewing. See you next time.